Pucks with Haggs, brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 136th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I didn't get a chance to look it up, so we're going to go with that and stick with it. I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. You get all of my NHL and Bruins writing sent straight directly to your inbox via email. I also write columns 3 times a week. That's thrice weekly for the Boston Sports Journal after Bruins games. So always check my thoughts out the morning after the Bruins games on bostonsportsjournal.com. With me today, I have the New England Hockey Journal tag team of Evan Marinofsky and Mark Divver. Boys, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Joe.
You got it. My pleasure. Let's also thank our sponsors real quick. Prize Picks, who we just mentioned. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Also, let's thank our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, we're recording this episode after a 2-0 loss to the Philadelphia Flyers. It's like one step forward and one step back for the Boston Bruins. I look at the standings this morning. They are 4-5-1 on the season. They are dead last in the Atlantic Division. They are second to last with a -7 goal differential in the Atlantic Division. Only Montreal has a worse goal differential. Obviously, it's the first month. It's still pretty early. There's still a few points out of a playoff spot and even second place in the Atlantic Division. But I'm just curious, Mark, we'll start with you, what your thoughts are on what you've seen so far. I'm going to save mine until the end, but I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to say and where you think this is all headed.
Well, a couple things jump out for me. They don't look like they're hard to play against at all.
No.
Which has been a staple of the Bruins for as long as I can remember, when they're good anyway.
Yep.
And they're boring a lot of the time. Last night, that was boring.
It was.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
the Washington-New York Rangers game last night was way better. There were fights, there were, goals, great chances, much more excitement than in the Bruins game. And that's it's going to be a long year if that continues. But yeah, they are only 3 points out of, they are in last place, but they're only 3 points out of second place. So
Right.
a couple of wins and maybe they get on track. I thought the Toronto thing would maybe give them a boost, but clearly it didn't. Winning that game the way they won, just to get a W. Not that they were dominant or anything like that in that game, but they got the W, but it didn't carry over at all. So,
No.
the fan base trades, burn it down, tank, go for the number 1 pick, call up
James Haggs
and Lysell, all the greatest hits.
Yes.
The greatest hits of the disgruntled Bruins fan base, they're all playing this morning. So
Yeah, they definitely are. And look, I agree with you. It was definitely boring last night. And the problem I had was watching it. I'm like, they're not winning this game. I thought that very early on, and I was waiting. It's basically like you're waiting for the mistake where the Flyers are finally going to score and take the lead. And then in the third period, you're waiting until the end when they pull the goalie and you knew it was going to be an empty net and that was going to be it. But that was a bad Flyers team, not a good Flyers team.
Yeah.
And you could see it last night. They were trying to give the game to the Bruins in the third period, and the Bruins just didn't want to take it. They 3 shots on net, didn't seize any of the opportunities. Flyers take a bad too many men on the ice penalties. The Bruins can't capitalize. The Bruins were giving the Flyers tons of chances, not tons, but a couple of really good chances in the third period to score. and the Flyers just can't execute close to the net. They made some pretty good plays to get around there, but they didn't have anybody that could actually execute and score until they got the empty netter. But it just didn't feel to me like at any point there was any urgency whatsoever from the Bruins to win that game last night and pull it out. Not even the perfunctory like third period, we're going to give it a shot now after like skating around like it's the Ice Capades for the first 40 minutes of the game, and then they finally get it in gear for the last 20. There was like none of that last night either. Evan, I'm going to throw it to you before I really go in depth on this. But the one other thing I would say is the Toronto game, yes, they got the result, but I also thought it was horrendous that they gave up that goal at the end to tie it up and put it in overtime. And it was another very problematic sign from this team of things that we've seen all year where there's real problems and issues that I think need to be addressed. But I also think they're not nearly as bad as we've seen, too. And that's part of the problem, I think, is they're playing well below their weight class, their talent level, like their ceiling, all that stuff right now. Evan, your thoughts on what you've seen the first month here?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting the worst case scenario from almost every player. I mean, you're getting the worst of Trent Frederick, the worst of Morgan Geekie, the worst up until recently of Brazeau, the worst of Coyle, the worst of Zacha, Marchand, I mean, defense too, McAvoy, Lindholm, both Lindholms. I mean, you're getting the worst of everybody. So I agree with you, Haggs, in that like they're better than this. We all think they're better than this. That's why I don't blow it up, don't trade everybody.
Right.
What concerned me about like Tuesday is, Ersson comes in with like a under 900 save percentage. I think he was like -6 in goals saved above expected. To me, like that's a game when that Elias Lindholm line puts up like 2 to 3 points each. That's that like back in the day, that would be a game where like Bergeron, Marchand, Pastrnak they'd win 5-1 and 4 of the goals would come from that line. And I'm not saying that Zacha, Lindholm, and Pastrnak are that, but against that Flyers team, they should have been. And I look at, Mark, you mentioned like just the lack of urgency. And you saw it in the offensive zone because they would get a substantial amount of ozone time, and it was all perimeter. Yeah. And people go, oh, well, the Flyers, they're so selfless. They block all these shots. And it's like, sure. But that's also a sign that you're not getting to high danger areas. That's a sign that you're stationary. That's a sign that you're doing things that are expected. McAvoy just shooting pucks into guys in front of him on power plays. Like that to me is what's so concerning. And that Toronto win, I thought would be sort of a spark. And instead, you're seeing the complete opposite. You're seeing that's an anomaly that game looked like. I mean, they've been playing bad now for over a week. And again, I just go back to Tuesday night's a game that you need those top guys to actually produce. And I mean, again, 3 shots in the third is egregious. And Divver and I on Friday talked, and I'm sure we will talk about this today. So I'm not, I don't want to jump the gun here, but Montgomery,
yes,
talked about that a lot. And, I don't think this is all his fault. I don't.
No.
This is on the players for sure. But how long can this go on for before they look to make a move? Because you can't trade everybody, unfortunately. So I wonder when that seat gets even hotter. Because I do think it's getting hot. I do think it's getting hot.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting last night that Montgomery talked about not only the players not good enough, but saying him taking some culpability and saying the game plan maybe wasn't where it needed to be either, and like that's on me. And like he was pulling the coach's move of accepting some of the responsibility along with the players, which is different than what he usually says in the past after things like this. And I think it's a sign that. And we've seen multiple signs from Jim Montgomery over this year that he's feeling the pressure and he knows that the heat is on for him. And it obviously is without a contract to start this year in the last year of his deal. But like the problem I have and what I see is like, quite honestly, like the effort level is not where it needs to be. Like when yesterday Jim Montgomery talks about puck pursuit being like the number one area that he's worried about, he's talking about the back check and the forecheck. He's talking about actually going after the puck, like being hungry for the puck, hunting the puck. if you lose the puck, making determination to go get it back, like playing relentless. How much did we hear over the summer and definitely in training camp that the Bruins and some of the players that they brought in, they wanted to start playing a little bit more like the Panthers. They wanted to be a relentless forechecking team that was going to attack you and really be in your face and do all these different things. And we're not seeing any of that. Like the other day at practice, Jim Montgomery had them doing a basic high school back checking drill. That drill where you've got 4 lines, you've got 2 lines of 2 guys that are passing the puck to each other shooting, and then the next 2 guys go and they're chasing them on the back check down the other end of the ice and going back and forth. And that's like basic hustle back check, like 101 drill. Like if he's trying to coax effort, like basic professional effort level of puck pursuit out of the players that he has right now, like I feel like I think he's in real trouble. Like if we're getting to this point, like he hasn't gotten to the Claude Julien when he was towards the end and he was basically throwing his hands up and saying, hey, I can't go on the ice and do it for them. Like this is on the players. He was basically like separating himself from what was going on the ice and saying, I'm just the coach. They have to go out there and do it. We haven't seen that from Jim Montgomery yet, but I feel like we're headed in that direction where he's going through all the different stages of when a coach is feeling the heat of reacting in different ways to try to get a spark from his team and to try to get something from him. All right, let's take a break from the show to talk about our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and you'll watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun and it's super simple. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this hockey season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Which ones are lighting the lamp? Which ones are trying to do the Michigan? You can figure out all that stuff using PrizePicks. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. And don't forget about the goalies being red hot and standing on their head either. Don't get dazzled by all the highlight reel goals. Think about your goalies, too. Let's see a little goalie love in this hockey world, especially at PrizePicks. All right, this week on PrizePicks, I'm looking at the hockey board and selecting Nathan MacKinnon for more than 0.5 goals and Evander Kane for more than 1.5 hits. Evander Kane running around, throwing the body at people. Also, David Pastrnak for more than 2.5 shots on goal. Not necessarily goals right now, though, because the Bruins are struggling. And Sidney Crosby for more than 0.5 points. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. What could be better than that? You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. But like ultimately, I think Evan and Mark, you're totally right. Like the fan base screaming and crying for Providence call-ups, for big trades, for all this like stuff, the roster changes. It's not happening. They're not changing the roster. They're not bringing in a whole bunch of different players. The guys in Providence are not going to make a big impact on this team. Yes, they're probably going to sign Tyler Johnson at some point, and maybe he helps them a little bit. But I think that's really the only place in the short term that any help is coming. The biggest shake-up move that I think they can make, because clearly waiving Riley Tufte and sending him to Providence is not a big shake-up move, is firing the coach, is making a coaching change and bringing in one of these assistants, of which, for my money, there's 3 of them that could potentially be head coaches. It's Chris Kelly, it's Joe Sacco, it's Jay Leach. Any one of them, I think, could be an internal.
No goalie
candidate.
Bob?
No goalie Bob. I think goalie Bob doesn't want that job. But if you're Jim Montgomery and you're looking around on the bench, you're seeing a bunch of guys that are kind of like, sitting there waiting for their opportunity. It's got to be an extremely difficult place for him to be, Mark. But like, I just feel like this is the inevitable road that we're going down, given the way the team is playing, given the situation that the Bruins set up with him not having an extension going into the year, that at some point there's going to be a logical time when they're going to make this move, and they must have somebody in mind that is going to take over. And it just feels to me like this is a group of players, and I hate to say this about them, but it's a group of players that's waiting for some kind of change like that to happen based on what I'm seeing and the way some of these guys are playing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess a question would be how soon? How soon
Right.
do you do it? Because if you I mean, they're in the thick of it right now. Nobody's out of it at this point. We're not even at Halloween yet, but boy, if this continues for a few more weeks, the hole gets deeper, and
it's Thanksgiving, and you're at a playoff spot.
Yeah, and then you're chasing all season, and that's no way. That's a foreign situation for the Bruins over in recent years to be chasing like that instead of in the lead. But I don't know what would be the point where they finally do pull the trigger. Is it a bad say they go into Carolina and on Thursday and get their doors blown off, which is a distinct possibility the way things have been going.
Yeah.
I mean, is it a bad performance that flips the switch or a long losing streak? I really don't know what it'll be, but it is up to the players, to get their butts in gear here, or else there will be changes starting probably with the coaching change.
Yeah, I mean, don't you feel like, Mark, if this dud they threw out there on the ice last night had happened last weekend against Toronto, this move might have already been made? Like, I feel like that's a pretty signature game, like where it was put off for a little bit, I think, based on the result and them getting that. But, like, I don't feel like we're that far out. Like, to your point, I don't feel like they can wait very long to make this move if they feel like this is the move to be made.
Yeah, well, the Toronto game, that would be very un-Sweeney-like to make a decision like that this soon, this early in the season.
Yeah.
But, maybe this is a situation where it's not his call. Maybe the word's coming down from above that, hey, okay, do something. Let's do something. So, I mean, that'll be something to track. Is who we probably wouldn't know until well after the fact who exactly would make that call, and
yeah.
It hasn't happened yet, so we can't talk about something that hasn't happened. But I don't know, ownership or Cam Neely can't be very comfortable with the way this is going.
No, I got to imagine, like sky high expectations. They invested a ton of money into the players they brought in over the summer. They put a lot into this roster, and to see the way it looks right now, Evan, I do feel like there's going to be pressure from ownership and the president of the club to do something to get a change. And a lot of people are saying it's a big, slow team. They got too many big players. They're not fast enough, like all this stuff, like criticizing the roster makeup. And like they are bigger, there's no question about it. And they may not be as fast as they've been at points in the past. But I don't think this team is like too slow and too big to compete in the NHL. I don't think that what we're seeing is a direct byproduct of everybody like operating on all cylinders, Evan, and going as much as they can right now. And they're just not good enough and don't stack up to other teams across the league. I just feel like this is a roster full of players right now that for whatever reason aren't all putting out everything that they can, and something needs to happen.
Yeah, the buy-in's not there. You
No.
can see it. And I think it's interesting because, like, good organizations don't fire coaches on a whim. Good organizations don't, sort of fire coaches willy-nilly. I think this is interesting, though, because, I think the Bruins are sort of at this crucial point where they have to figure out, do we want to invest in Jim Montgomery for the future? Yeah. We've seen this sort of little trial period, some very good highs, some really bad lows. I think this year was sort of going to be that X factor. And I think the other thing is the Bruins have become accustomed to starting hot. The last 2 years, they were, the best team in October. They were hot out of the gate. And maybe that is the case this year. But Haggs, to your point, like that urgency's not there. It's not like they're losing 1-goal games. And it's like, oh, they were right there. They just, bad call here. It's just not there. And the scoring is so far from there. And I think there's some stylistic issues in the offensive zone. They don't shoot the puck enough. Like, no. And they don't move enough. Like, and they don't get to high danger chances. Or high danger areas, and they're too focused on doing that. But in terms of Montgomery, like you asked Div about, is it a loss or is it a streak? I think it's a streak. And I think if they lost against Toronto, and I think if last night happened the same way, I mean, what would that be, 4 or 5 in a row? Like,
Yeah.
I would think it would be coming this week. I think that win on Saturday probably bought him another week or two, because you're right. I mean, you start to get into mid to late November. I mean, we're 2 days away as we record this from November.
Happy
Your
Halloween,
playoff chances, yeah, exactly. Happy Halloween. Your chances dwindle, obviously, and so, you know, I that's the tough part. And as you guys said, like, they have potential interims on the bench: Jay Leach, Chris Kelly, Joe Sacco. Like, those guys are there. And Montgomery's also not a Bruins guy. Like,
No.
he didn't come up through the organization. You know, Bruce Cassidy was in Providence for 10 years. And so I think that's the other thing where it's like, I don't know if they have this deep, you know, like, oh, we brought him up, you know, he has more to give. I mean, to them, and I'm just saying this as an outsider, like, to them, it's just another coach. And that's what the reality is with a lot of these NHL coaches. They're, you know, aside from a few, they're just kind of Jags. Just another guy, just another coach. And I think Montgomery's a good coach. Like, I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying that he's not a guy that was brought up in Boston and in the system. And I don't know if that bond is there to really not, you know, to give him more and more chances, especially after 2023's playoffs. I think they really wanted to get to a Game 7 last year against Florida.
Yep.
And then the start this season with a roster they invested a lot of money into.
Yeah, it's a great point, Evan. And all three of the other guys that we talk about are Bruins guys. They're you know, weird in the system. They have a lot of connections. I think they're thought of very highly by management and the players. And
I mean, they went and got Jay Leach from Seattle, who moved moved himself out there for like a year or two, and they brought him all the way back. Like, they're not bringing him back for no reason.
Well, and he was in the running, being considered when they needed a head coach too. Like, they were thinking of him back then when they hired Jim Montgomery. So, I do think you know, it's a lot of interesting dynamics at play. And I've said this a few times. I think Don Sweeney is a very deliberate person, and I think he, like, really, everything's well thought out, everything's executed in a certain way. There's not a lot of rashness to the things that he does. There's a lot of thought and preciseness. And, like, it right now is the same situation that Claude had when he was fired that year, where, you know, they brought somebody in, or they brought people in that were clearly going to be the replacement when the move was made. And, you know, he was not extended, or the time had come where they were going to make the move. And I feel like the same situation is sort of playing out here. And it's tough for, like, give Montgomery, credit where it's tough for him to operate, I think, under the circumstances the way they are right now. He obviously has to do that, and he has plenty of players that are in the last years of their contract. So he has to set the example of, like, still doing his best, just like he expects his players that are in the same situation to do the best. But that's a tough spot for a coach to be in. And it's going to continue to be until, like, something happens one way or the other. Especially if they struggle. It becomes untenable if they continue to struggle like they are. Mark, when you're watching this team right now, which player has you the most mystified? Who are you looking at and you're like, what is going on with this guy right now? I can tell you right now, for me, it's Charlie Coyle. Just, like, zero factor right now. Really bad plus minus number. 1 point in 10 games is not nearly enough of a presence offensively. Two-way is not the player that he's been in the past. Coming off one of his best NHL season last year, where he made me a believer that he was a top 6 center in the NHL. But, like, I think this, like, first month has been one of the worst stretches that he's had as a member of the Bruins since coming here. And he's got me really scratching his head as to what's going on with him. But who are you looking at right now and saying, I don't know what's happening with this player. I don't recognize him.
Well, I agree with you on Coyle. I wonder about Charlie McAvoy. I keep looking. I mean, he hasn't been awful, a lot of the time, but for a guy in his position, making the money he's making, and his high profile on the team and in the league as a top defenseman, I'm expecting more than what he's given so far. I mean, some of the decisions, puck management things, just continue to crop up from time to time that have you wondering, like, where's his head? So I would point to him as one of the guys. Elias Lindholm, I would say he's been okay.
Yeah.
But
I thought he was their best player last night. He didn't finish
Yeah.
on a couple of great chances, but he was their best player last night.
yeah,
Like,
I think that's a fair call. But you'd like a little, and maybe I didn't watch him enough on the West Coast, those late games, to to really get a handle on what he is. But I was hoping for a little bit better from him, and maybe we'll see it going forward. But so far, I've been not underwhelmed, but I just expected a little more.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of players that definitely fall under that headline, given where they're at right now and how they've played. To the McAvoy point, undisciplined bad penalties, he's taken a bunch. Very out of position a lot of the time for a guy that's supposed to be a defense first defenseman, or a guy that really cares about the defensive end. It feels to me, and I've said this once or twice before, it feels to me like he thought going into this year was Zadorov here, that he could be a rover and he could just like roam around and do whatever he wanted to do offensively and not worry about his defensive responsibilities as much. And he's kind of played that way at times, especially early in the year. It seemed like he was all over the place, like not in his position, not where he was supposed to be. And I agree. Like, and there's the basic things with him. Even at his best, I'm not sure he should be like the top power play quarterback of the number one power play unit on this team. And I think that continues to be the case. And we saw that last night again, where he's just like firing pucks into shot blockers instead of like creating shooting lanes or moving the puck around, or moving himself and creating player movement in the power play structure. But like, I agree with you. I do not think he has been good at all, especially what he's being paid and what his responsibilities are. Evan, you're anybody that you've watched, and even if you have something to add on McAvoy and Coyle, what you've watched and been sort of mystified by here in the early going.
I was gonna say, can I pick like every player? Can I pick every guy on the team? Like, can we do that? McAvoy's an interesting
how about
one.
Frederick in a contract year?
Well,
He's
that's
been abysmal too.
Frederick and Geeky, they're both in contract years. And that's the other thing. Like, when I was kind of at the beginning of the year and in the offseason saying this team's going to be really good, it was because those guys are middle six stalwarts and they're in contract years. So it's like, all right, well, they're going to turn it up. And I mean, I think Frederick has 3 points. Geeky has 1. Montgomery called Geeky out the other day.
Yep.
McAvoy's an interesting one. I think he's doing way too much, trying to do way too much. There were some shifts on Tuesday where he's the third forward. Where another forward is just straight up covering for him at the point, and McAvoy's down deep, and nothing's happening. And I agree with you, Haggs. You and I have said this a lot over the last year about him on the power play. You have guys like Lindholm, you have Lowry. I mean, McAvoy kind of just stands there. Like, there's not a lot of movement. So he's not been great. My first instinct, because Coyle's been bad too, Elias Lindholm, Divver, you hit it. And I know that he had an okay game on Tuesday. He's pointless in 7 straight games. 7 straight games without a point. And to me, like, he started out 5 points in the first 3 games. I remember saying, oh, wow, you're getting big dividends from Elias Lindholm already. That's unacceptable. You get paid to be the number 1 center. You play with David Pastrnak. You're on the top power play. You have no points in 7 games. You'd have to go back. And again, this is an unfair comparison. And I understand that it is an unfair comparison. But, like, did Patrice Bergeron ever go pointless for 7 straight games? And I know they're different players and everything. But, like, to me, that's unacceptable. I know he's a two-way guy, good on draws, and I'm for that. But you're almost getting paid $8 million a year, and you're playing with David Pastrnak. The points have to be there. He's one, and then also Pavel Zacha. Yeah. He's up there with them. Like, I figured he was gonna, 60-point year playing with Lindholm and Pastrnak. He's been moved on and off that first line. He did have some chances on Tuesday. I mean, the chances have been there.
He's had a lot of good chances this year, and he has not been able to finish. Like, I think of all those Bruins forwards, he's probably had the best scoring chances consistently, and he's not finishing on any of them.
He had that sort of semi-breakaway last night, and he just kind of settled for a little wrister and missed top corner. And, and he had some chances down by the net and kind of got robbed, and I get that. But there's got to be a little more on that. And the fact that they have to move him off that line and try to jumpstart Marchand and stuff. I mean, that's the thing where like, and all these guys we mentioned, these are legitimate pieces of this team. It's not like it's Cole Koepke or it's Mark Kastelik or it's
Right.
Mason Lowry. Like, these are guys who are bringing in a lot of coin and have big roles, and they've not been there at all. And I think you could make a case for more guys too. Like, I think we've only touched on like half of them so far.
Well, yeah, Carlo, I think he's been a little better lately, but he really struggled at the start of the year, the first handful of games. I think, one that, and Lowry, I think, has struggled in this, first full season, like coming off the momentum of last year. I think he's had a couple of good moments, but I think there's been a few, more than one or two games where he's looked like a young player, like trying to establish himself and trying to, play catch up. And certainly defensive end of it has been challenging for him. You know what team Boston sports fans are most excited about this time of year right now? It's not the Patriots, definitely not the Red Sox. I mean, there's plenty of Bruins fans that are very excited about the Boston Bruins, but I've got to tell you, I think the team that everybody's most excited about is the Boston Celtics. They're excited about NBA hoops coming back. They're excited to go to the Garden and watch the Celtics play, defending that world championship and watching Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and all of those guys that they've loaded up on their roster. And you know where the best place to get Celtics tickets is, to get tickets to the Garden, to see basketball games? It's our friends at Game Time. Yes, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets by using the app, by getting your tickets through the app. It's the most exciting time of year for a basketball fan. Just look at all the features on the Game Time app. I love the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Who detests, I raise my hand, surprise fees at the checkout? Game Time is not about that. They are about showing you upfront what the cost of the tickets are. I am all about that. You can get seat views, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy the tickets. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. If you're looking for Celtics tickets, Game Time is the place to go. You got to take the guesswork out of buying tickets for the Celtics. And oh, by the way, you can get Patriots tickets, you can get Bruins tickets, you can get concert tickets, comedy tickets, whatever you want. But we're talking the Celtics right now. You can use all of those things at Game Time. So create the Game Time app, go to the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app. It's super easy to use. Create an account and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today for all of your Celtics and NBA tickets, folks. What time is it? It's Game Time. One guy I would mention, and he's got 6 goals, is Pasternak. I think he has been... He's obviously, he's so talented. He's going to score goals. He's going to get put in situations where he's going to finish, and he's just a natural born goal scorer. So he's going to have goals. But you look at some of the decisions that he's making, some of the penalties that he's taken, the casual way he was acting with the puck on the power play in the third period last night in a 1-goal game. Just some of the stuff that he's doing. He had a couple of breakaway chances. I forget which game it was. And he didn't even get a shot on net. And he either of 2 clear breakaway chances that he had. One he missed with a backhand. The other one he just fumbled the puck away and tripped and fell. Last night he fumbles a one-timer, and then there's another time he has the puck, and he's just kind of just skating around with it. There's zero urgency whatsoever to what he's doing. He's fascinating for me to watch because I feel like he's producing enough to where you say, oh, he's doing his job. But when you actually watch what he's doing, Mark, there are so many mistakes that he's making, and there's so many different things that he's doing that I feel like sets the entire sort of casual, non-relentless tone that we've seen out of this Bruins team early in the year.
Yeah, you mentioned, the casualness, that kind of body language. I think he's had that casual look to him that I don't think he's had when he's been at his best.
Yep.
And the one-timer, I mean, I feel like he's relying on that a little bit too much. maybe that's kind of like saying, geez, Ovechkin shoots the one-timer too much. He needs to stop. But, when he shanks it, and that's going to happen, I wonder, geez, was there another play there? Should he have caught the puck and made a pass? Maybe he could have done something different. And, what do I know about the one-timer? But it doesn't seem to be as productive as it has been in the past. And I think as soon as the pass goes over that way, the goalie is over to the other side of the net and he's in position.
Yep.
Everyone knows that's coming, and that's true of Ovechkin as well. And he still manages to get his share, and Pasta does too. But I think digging in a little bit more would help Pasta for sure.
I think it would, and especially guys like Pasternak and McAvoy, they can't go through the motions, or they can't play with that kind of casual level when they've got letters on their sweaters. These guys are supposed to be leaders. These guys are supposed to be part of the leadership group that's setting the example for everybody else. When this team was going at its best, are you going to see Bergeron and Chara playing that way? When with letters on their sweaters and in leadership roles? Absolutely not. That would never have happened. And that is, I think, part of the overall thing that needs to change about this team. Is I think there needs to be tone setting from those players in the right way. I do think another thing with Pasternak, that sort of drag and snap slingshot thing that he does sometimes, that he scored with a few times last year, I think he's relying on that in certain situations too much. When he gets a little bit of a breakaway, or there are times he does it and he doesn't even get a shot on net in a clear place and chance where you got to get at least a shot on net, get the puck on net, and create some chaos in the offensive zone and make sure you get something out of it instead of just missing or fumbling the puck away and making it a nothing play, which I think is happening too much with him, where it's kind of all or nothing. Evan, anything with Pasta that you've sort of seen or noticed at the start of this season?
I think one of the biggest things with him is last year he was the guy on offensively. He was the one-man show, was Pasternak, and you saw in the playoffs him struggle with that a little bit because teams would just clamp down on him and be really physical with him, and that was that.
Yep.
I think I wonder with him, and he hasn't mentioned this, and I don't imagine that he will, sort of being a little demoralized. They went out and got Elias Lindholm. That was supposed to be sort of his guy. And through 3 games, it was working. But the points haven't been there. And I wonder if Pasternak sort of still feels that same way of oh my God, the offense basically just rests on my shoulders. Because the reality is, I think this team has 2 legitimate top-line forwards. And that's Lindholm, who's not playing that way, and it's Pasternak. Everybody else is sort of a middle 6 guy. Marchand is now a middle 6 guy, and Pavel Zacha is a middle 6 guy, and Charlie Coyle and Trent Frederick and Morgan Geekie. And those guys aren't going to produce every night. You can't count on those guys every single night. And I just wonder, and this sort of is a roster question of is that pressure sort of got to Pasternak where it's over a year now? And now he makes the money that should not be a problem. That's the other part, right? Him and McAvoy are your 2 top earners. They've got to be there. They've got to be, at the top of their game, and they got to at least look like they care. I don't know if you guys saw on that one goal that the Flyers scored at even strength. That play started in the neutral zone, and Pasternak obviously, was on the left side, and he, did the cut across to get to the bench as they were, I think, going D to D or going up, and he just kind of saunters to the bench at a time like that. You're the far side wing there. To me, that's unacceptable because.
Yeah.
And Montgomery was yelling at someone on the bench. I couldn't tell who it was. But again, an easy neutral zone, trip to the neutral zone, an easy zone entry. It's those little things like that. And I just wonder if it goes back to having the pressure of the weight of your offense on your shoulders. It shouldn't be crippling, but I do wonder if that's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, the one legit roster complaint, gripe, whatever, that fans can have, it's not blowing up the roster. It's not that this team is too big and slow to compete. It's not any of that stuff. The one thing I would say is legit, and it's been legit since the summertime, and Don Sweeney even admitted it when we talked to him on July 1, is that this team is definitely 1 top 6 winger short as far as the roster goes. They are definitely Jake DeBrusk left. They didn't adequately replace him on the wing. And Mark, that's the one spot that they're going to have to, fix at the trade deadline. But like, I think the plan all along was by committee to see if anybody could seize hold of it for a while, or anybody could like step up their game and play up to that level and help them out. And so far it's been a colossal failure to try to find somebody that can step into that role.
Yeah, it has, no question. So I mean, do you make a move now? Do you wait until maybe it's too late? I would think that making a move soon would be the way to go to fill that void. And I say this over and over again. Frank Vetrano. And okay,
Frankie Vetrano.
There's a guy who can score. Okay.
Yep.
He knows the drill here in Boston. The thing is, you got to make it match up money-wise, and there's the problem. And you don't, why would Anaheim be in any hurry to trade him? But
yep,
there's a guy that I think could help. There's other ones out there. I couldn't list them at this point, but I mean, that's an issue that's going to have to be addressed either sooner or later, and maybe sooner is the way to go there.
Yeah, Vetrano's an interesting one. Obviously, he's another one. The Bruins like their players that they have history with, that they've liked, that they know them and they know they're going to fit in well. And Vetrano's obviously a guy they've got a lot of institutional knowledge on, and they know what he brings to the table. So it would be interesting to bring him back, especially now that he's gone out and done well other places. It was finally an All-Star last year, which was impressive. When he was with Anaheim. I remember, this is going way back now. I can't remember if this was like 2014, 2015. I forget when it was, 2013, somewhere in there. My cousin Adam Garagoshin, who played at Northeastern, was a goalie at Northeastern. A great real estate agent in Charlestown, by the way, if you're looking for a Charlestown real estate agent. Son of Mike Garagoshin, the longtime BU goalie coach for Jack Parker, my uncle. He used to do some goalie work for the Bruins, kind of like Segui does now. Keith Segui does now. Would be an e-bug. He was the e-bug for the Bruins for a while. He did a lot of skating with them in 2013 during the lockout when they were playing skating at Walter Brown. And I remember him coming up to me and after, like, when he'd been skating with Vetrano for a little bit and saying to me, that kid's going to be an NHL stud. Like, his shot is unbelievable. Like, that kid's like got talent. Like, he knew right away as a goalie, like he could see it. And I'd always had my eye on him from that point forward and knew like he was going to probably end up making it, because like everybody knows when you see a player like that as long as they've got their head on straight, they're going to make it. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the guy. But, I would take Frank Vetrano Redux in Boston, Evan. That would be who wouldn't love that? A New England Hockey Journal would certainly like that.
I was going to say, that's like the dream of New England Hockey Journals to have that. Another fun New England Hockey Journal dream that is not happening, and I don't know how you would make this work, but it ties in. If San Jose is destined for the number one pick again, and that number one pick is likely to be James Haggs, who is franchise centerman.
Yep.
They have Macklin Celebrini, another franchise centerman. I don't know if you guys have noticed, Divver, I know you definitely have. Will Smith has struggled mightily out of the gate in San Jose. I'm not saying, again, it's impossible. And I don't think San Jose would ever do this. I don't even know what it would take. But go get Will Smith. Go get Will Smith. That would be what I would say to do. Go get Will Smith. Make it happen. Find a way. He needs to be at home, comfortable. Maybe lives at home in Lexington, saves some money. I really do. Like, I wonder. And they would never do it. But again, the reality of that, and this is a San Jose thing, not a Bruins thing. I hope you can't hear the work they're doing outside my house, which has been incredibly annoying. They've been doing it since like 6 a.m. I do wonder at some point if San Jose makes a move with either their first round pick or something, because they can't have all three of those centers on that roster. That's impossible. So Will Smith, I would say go get Will Smith. Find a way, whether it's giving up your first and a top prospect or whatever it is. Like, I would say go get Will Smith.
You signing on for that, Mark?
I'm half serious. It's more of a fun idea I have. I don't think that's actually practical.
I think Mike Greer's a smart guy. I don't think he's making that move.
He's not giving that up quick.
I think they would convert one of those centers to wing rather than trading them away. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
One can dream.
Yeah,
to go back on a little bit more serious note, Frank Vetrano.
Well, let me say this about the Vetrano thing. Like any player that they're bringing in like that, they're going to have to move players off the NHL roster, clear salary cap space to make that happen, and that becomes an interesting guessing game as to who that could possibly be or who they're looking at. And I got to think Morgan Geekie is one of the guys that would end up going somewhere if they did end up making a trade like that. And I wonder if they look at, shaking things up on the back end too, if that becomes something where they would, try to move a player from there as well. I don't know they have as many ready-made replacements that they'd want to bring in. And I'd be hesitant to do that, but I do think you'd have to look at NHL pieces off this roster to move if and when you make that kind of a trade.
Yeah, I if Morgan Geekie continues the way he's going, the move for him might be to Providence.
Right.
To try and pump some life back into his game. Boy, I don't. I guess last year was such a surprise. Last year was the outlier. It appears in his career, and now maybe he's back to what he really is, which is kind of a discouraging or frightening thought if you're the Bruins that he's been this. There's just not a lot going on there early in the season here. I don't know. How you snap him out of that.
His game was so much of it was about hard skill and second and third effort on pucks. All that's he's not a dazzling hockey player with a skill set, but he has hard skill. He almost looks like he's going to lose the puck, but he hangs on to it and he goes through guys with it. And it was second and third effort, beating guys in battles to hold on to the puck and get it into good scoring areas. There's been none of that from him or from anybody else on this team to start this year. That determination, they're going to get the puck to the net, or that determination, they're going to take the puck away from somebody when it gets taken away from them. There's been none of that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And so I don't, like I said earlier, I don't know what the answer is with him. I really don't. What do you do? Do you try and sit him out? I think they did that, didn't they?
They did.
He sit out.
He was scratched. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's a tough one.
It is. Yeah. Go ahead, Evan.
Well, you're right. I think Geekie would have to be put in a trade. Obviously, in a trade, you have to free up that roster spot. I did, as you guys were talking, I did write down if they got Vetrano and traded Geekie, what would you think of these lines? Vetrano, Lindholm, Pasternak, Marchand, Zacha, Coyle, to go with the lefty-righty on the wings.
Yeah.
Frederick, Patra, Brazeau, and then you keep the fourth line as Kepke, Beecher, Kastelik. I mean, I think that is better. I don't know if that's Stanley Cup caliber, but I think that is better. You have a more proven goal scorer on that top line. You also could keep Zacha up there and put Vetrano on the second line. The Vetrano thing does give you options. It's just how willing is Anaheim to deal him.
Well, here's a thought that I'm going to throw out there and duck after I say it.
Can't be as bad as my Will Smith one.
What if you traded Trent Frederick for Frank Vetrano?
Yeah,
Freddie's he's in a contract year. He's not off to a great start.
Yep.
You got to give up something to get something. Anaheim's a building team. Maybe they could use Frederick in kind of in that role. They got some young talent, but not a lot of hardness that Freddie can bring when he's at his best, which he hasn't been. But I don't know. Maybe that's just, like I said, I'm throwing that out there, and now I'm going to duck. That's
the commenters are going to be all over you, Mark.
They are. I'm ready.
Some East Coast dude or whatever. What was it?
That's right. Random dude.
Yeah, some random dude from the East Coast. I think like there very well may come a determination where the Bruins decide whatever the price tag is going to be from Frederick based on like what he did last year is something they're not going to want to pay if they can't consistently get that out of him. You know, like if he's not going to be that guy all the time, and you can't rely on him to nightly be that hard physical, you know, hard to play against player that's also productive and continues to like ascend as far as the offensive production goes. Like you're not going to pay him that money. You're not going to pay him that kind of money if he can't be that guy all the time. So like, and he would have value to other teams because they would probably feel like they can get that out, or if they can find a way to get that out of him, he's going to be very valuable to them because those guys are rare, right? The power forward types that can drop the gloves and are physical.
Well, and another, you know, sort of a side factor there is the impact of that in the dressing room, because who doesn't like Freddie?
Right.
You know, I think he's very popular in that room.
Yep.
He's a very likable kid.
Yep.
No question about it.
Yep.
That would really be a shakeup that would have some impact, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. That would definitely get people's attention. There's no question about that. And I think really at that point, we're at the point I feel like watching this team where whatever it is, whether it's Montgomery and a coaching change, whether it's a trade of some kind, like I feel like something has to be done by Bruins management and ownership to shake things up and to get the attention of these players, because I just feel like they are way too comfortable in there right now with the way that they're playing and the way they're operating, where like something needs to change.
I also think like, and I think that Frederick for Vetrano idea is really interesting. Because I don't know how you guys feel, but I would do anything not to trade the first round pick. Like, that's the biggest thing. This team needs to make first round picks. This team needs to get higher end guys in the draft, all that stuff. I would, if they were able to upgrade the roster a good amount without dealing that first rounder, that's a win. Like, and that's why, like, if you could somehow do a Frederick for Vetrano deal, like, I would be all over it, 100%. Now, maybe you'd have to add in a little something else, a prospect, whatever it is. But I think it's absolute. Like, I don't touch that first rounder right now. And I also think, like, at the rate that they're going, and if that continues and they don't make any moves for a little while here, and it is, you know, mid-December and they're sort of in the same spot where they're kind of inconsistent, like I'm definitely not giving up a first round pick for this team. It's more, you know, if you got to trade a guy like Frederick or Geeky in a contract year, that's what you do. You don't deal the first rounder. So
yeah, I agree. So let's make it Trent Frederick for Will Smith. Let's make it happen, Mike.
There we go. That's easy.
We've solved all the Bruins problems here at the very end of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. Mark, Evan, thank you very much. Let's also thank Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Let's also thank Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? Game time. Evan, Mark, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for having us.
You got it. Let's hope there's some more happy Bruins talk the next time we get together and things are going a little bit better. We'll see. Everybody else out there, thank you for listening. We'll see you at the rink.